Welcome to the Real Estate Wealth Insider. This is Dr. Albert Lowry, and I'm so excited about a guest that I have today because he's going to share with you one of the great secrets of really understanding about probate. You know, pretty well every family in this country at some time is involved with the area of probate, but they don't know what it is, and as a result, they go to their attorneys. The attorneys, of course, hire a lot of various different people and various things to do. But the interesting thing is there's so many bargains that can be created. There's so many services that are basically available. There's just so many different ways that people can make a great deal of money out of probate, which may not be their own immediate family, but this does happen. But few people have ever taken the time to really understand it and learn all about it. And you know, I'm so fortunate today because I got the foremost probate instructor in the whole of the country to teach you and share with you as to some of the things that you should be learning about probate so you too can get to the marketplace and make a great deal of money. My guest today is Jim Banks, well renowned and well known throughout the country on having the secrets that he's going to be sharing with you. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate it. Look forward to talking with you. Well, let's start with what is probate. Probate is simply when someone passes away. The assets that are left have to be distributed, hence they have to be probated. It is no more complicated than that. Now, there are a couple of strange words in real estate. One is foreclosure and one is probate. And I think, as most people know, foreclosure is simply when someone cannot make their loan payments, so the lender takes back the property because that's what was used as a security device in order to initiate the loan to begin with. Again, probate is simply when someone passes away. And unfortunately, people from time to time get the two confused. Probate has one advantage that no other kind of real estate has. And that is, if you do it correctly, you can buy real estate where the address is never in print. If it's not in print, who's going to compete against you and make the price go up? The answer is nobody. Hence, if you do it correctly, you have no competition. Let's look at traditional ways of buying real estate. Foreclosures, REOs, which were foreclosures that the people who bird dog foreclosures did not want. That's how good they are. And the bank is selling them virtually at retail. MLS. I've been a broker for over 30 years, real estate broker for over 30 years. I go to the MLS, multiple listing service, and I know every property in the county that's being sold. Tax sales. You go down to the county recorder's office, the assessor's office, and they'll be happy to give you a print, or the website where all the properties for sale, you push the button and they all print out. And then there's FSBOs, for sale by owners. They put a sign in the yard, they advertise in paper, they do the best they can to sell their property. All these traditional methods have one thing in common. The address is in print. Have you ever met anybody who couldn't read? Therefore, you have no advantage over anybody else if the address is in print. You want to do the opposite of the public, and you'll never make a mistake. And probate is the opposite of the public. It's secret real estate. It's unlisted. It's not published. It's not in the MLS. If you do your job right, I will get you there before real estate brokers and real estate developers and anybody else. And don't let me just talk about real estate. Every probate on the planet has personal property. When you go into an antique store, everything in that store came out of probate. Antiques, by definition, have to be 100 years old, so they're not making any new antiques. Around the country, investors have two problems right now. One is inventory. Well, they don't know where to look because right this minute and every minute thereafter, there are over 7 million unsettled probates in the United States of America. I'm going to repeat that. There are 7 million unsettled probates every minute of every day. Last year, over 2.5 million Americans unfortunately passed away. It's even becoming more because boomers are getting older. There will never, ever, ever be a shortage of probates. Right this minute, there are 38 times more probates than there are foreclosures. Would you rather compete with everybody who knows how to read or walk into it all by yourself? You've seen shows on TV like Storage Wars, Antique Roadshow, so on and so forth. Most of those things came out of probate. But I want to run an analogy for you. You've seen storage wars. Guy can't make his payment. The owner forecloses on it, has 20 people there, opens the door, throws it up. You can't go in, but you can look in, and the people start bidding up the price. Now, I want you to visualize you walk into a probate house all by yourself. Everything you see is for sale. How's the price going to go up if there's nobody bidding the price up? You'll buy personal property for 5, 7 cents on the dollar. Often you get it free just to get it out of their lives because all they want to do is sell the house. And there is every kind of real estate in probate. Anything a human being owns or possesses is in probate. There's commercial, industrial, raw land, agricultural land, farmland, ranch land, horse land, deserts, beachfront property. Every kind of real estate is in probate, not just houses. Now, with these 7 million probates, the value is over $6 trillion with a T. There's over $6 trillion of assets in probate. That's how much the national debt has gone up since Bush got out of office. There's a lot of assets in probate.
Jim, I was just thinking about the fact about our listener there thinking, well, my gosh, this is so exciting. I sure want to be able to get to this type of thing as quickly as I possibly can. How come that this has been so secretive that most people are just not aware of it? What is the answer to that, Jim?
First of all, the fear of the unknown. When any of us walk into a dark house, we're obviously nervous because we don't know what's on the other side of the wall, and we're nervous. The fear of the judicial system runs rampant. People believe because it's the judicial system, it's scary. It's not scary. If probate was complicated, attorneys couldn't do it. Very few lawyers specialize in probate. Because of television and movies, the belief is if you go to law school, you know everything about the law. That's not true. It's just like the medical profession. Your kid falls out of a tree. Your next door neighbor's a brain surgeon. Do you take your kid to the brain surgeon or you run him down to the emergency room where they can set the arm? Obviously, you send him to the emergency room. The law is just as specialized, and people do not specialize in probate. Personal injury law, trial law, litigation, everything else. So you've got an attorney who only had to take one course in law school, errors and omission, to even know anything about probate whatsoever so they could pass the bar exam. The fear of the unknown is the number one reason. It is not complicated. It is very, very simple. We have a 5-step program that takes you step by step through the entire process. Got hundreds of testimonials, all of which are approved by the FTA. Also, for those of you who are familiar with Guthrie Ranker, they endorse Cindy Crawford and Proactive. Tony Robbins has also been represented by Guthrie Ranker. I am the only real estate person Guthrie Ranker has ever endorsed. And the reason for that is real simple. Not only am I squeaky clean, this works. Like you, Mr. Lowry, we've been around for 30 years. Virtually nobody else has because our stuff works. Probate works. There's no cure for death. And the laws of probate have not changed in 5,000 years. Only the access to the information has changed because of the computer age.
You know, Jim, speaking about probate, and it seems to be such a mystery for the majority of people out there, and you're saying there's various different steps actually that are involved there. Could you give us just a little bit of an outline of what those steps might happen to be so we can kind of really fathom this wonderful thing that you've got for us?
One of the misconceptions is that we cut out death notices in the paper, which we do not do for a number of reasons, one of which is not everybody has assets when they pass away. And historically, there's usually a time lag between the time when somebody passes away and they file for probate. So we do not follow death notices, don't follow the mortuaries, we don't do any of that. There are notices that are printed that have to be printed by law to acknowledge that there is a probate of Sam Smith. They are down at the courthouse, they are in newspapers, eventually they even find their way to the internet. And that's historically when we start. We start after there is a probate. One of the myths about probate is that so many people have living trust now that it's cut down the number of probates. And in theory, I understand the logic, but the reality is because people are getting living trust at 20, 30, 40, 50, and living to 60, 70, 80, 90, it has no effect on us. The reason being, A living trust only does what it's supposed to do if every asset that requires a signature is in that living trust. Gave a lecture in Houston once. Guy came up afterwards. He says, you're right. Well, that's good. I talked for an hour and a half. What one sentence did I say that was right? He said, well, on the 10th of every month, I add anything I bought to that living trust. And being kind of a wise guy, I said, boy, I hope you don't die on the 9th. The point is, anything that requires a signature that is not in that living trust has to go through probate. And the person who's going to head up the probate is also going to be the person that heads up the living trust. But because of the person's death and the probate, we also buy the assets that are in the living trust. The point here is living trust has zero effect on the number of probates. And again, we're talking 7 million. Go back to when you were single. You walk into a club, there's 7 million people of the opposite sex than you. Do you think you might connect with a couple? And how many do you need? The numbers are phenomenal. One of the advantages of buying real estate where the address isn't in print is you make money. When you walk into a retail store, the markup traditionally has been 100%. It's called a keystone markup. So if the retailer buys it wholesale for $1, he sells it to you for $2. Big investors always expect to double their money, keystone markup. The cost of flipping a property runs right at 15% everywhere in the United States. The reason being, you have cost when you buy it, you have cost when you hold it, you have cost when you fix it up, and you have cost when you sell it. The sum of those elements run right at 15%. So if it's costing you 15% to make widgets, and you're selling widgets, you've got to buy them 30% below fair market value in order to get that 100% return on investment. And when you're buying real estate where the address isn't in print, you will learn to buy $1 for 50, 40, 30, and one example I have, 21 cents on the dollar. There's nobody competing with you. The price doesn't go up. There is no better way on earth to buy real estate than probate, period. End of conversation. Now, I primarily talk to your greed button, but the reality is we help settle estates. The average estate takes 3 years to settle. Why? And I think you all know the answer. The attorney can keep billing. Who's going to complain? The guy's dead, and even if you suspected the probate attorney's overbilling, who are you going to petition to? The judge, a fraternity brother. Probate is the slush fund to the judicial system. There is absolutely, positively no oversight whatsoever. It's kind of like a government program. We are the good guys. We help settle the estate. We bring closure, not only financial, but emotional closure to the estate. We really are the good guys. We wear the white hat.
Jim, it just seems to me, Archie, if we have the situation where this probate is taking like 3 years to complete, as we're talking about, well, do you mean to tell me that if I'm an investor and I want to go ahead and be involved in probate, because it sounds so exciting, that I could be in the position I would like to maybe buy a home out of the probate estate, and I might have to wait maybe a couple of years to get possession, or is there a shortcut?
Your point is 100% valid and one of the great myths. If we waited till the estate was settled, we would no longer be buying it in probate. It would be out of probate by definition. We buy it while it's in probate. The estate needs cash. Hardly anybody dies with enough cash. And almost without exception, the largest asset is the real estate. And how are you going to divide a house? With a buzzsaw? Of course not. So you sell the house and divide the money. And that is during the probate process. And by getting there early, we help bring liquidity to the estate and help solve problems. So no, we buy the property while it is in probate. And there's a great myth that you can't buy it in property. Well, if you don't, then it's out of probate by definition, because the estate's been settled, there's no assets left.
Jim, when we're thinking about buying, say, a dwelling of some type, and you mentioned there that there's personal property, etc., would it be possible to maybe buy all the furnishings that are in the home, and maybe the car that's in the side drive, and maybe the snowblower in the garage? Do you get all of this at the same time, or are these two different types of contracts? Or could you explain that to us so we can learn?
First of all, anything a human being owns or possesses is in probate. In the old days, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, nothing trumps experience. I'm it, because nobody's worked probate more than I have. We used to bring in a dumpster and throw everything in the dumpster and take it to the dump. Because who thought people would save teacups? They save everything now. I bought a 57 T-Bird, 4 flat tires, 2 inches of dust, and a dead battery out of probate. A friend of yours named Mark Harrelson, 30 days later, I bought it for $7,500, offered me $30,000 on national television. A white 57 T-Bird, used to drive it all over Newport Beach. There are cars, there are antiques, coin collections, stamp collections, stocks, bonds, anything a human being or owner possesses in probate. And thanks to the eBay, you can sell it anywhere. So yes, it is a separate contract to answer the question you asked. But you can include on your real estate contract all the contents. These people don't want the stuff. You've all heard this, and it's true. I got the date that Tom Brokaw said it on TV when he was the head guy for NBC. Over 70% of lottery winners are flat broke within 3 years. The insurance industry says the beneficiary of a life insurance policy squanders every penny within 3.5 years. So this is a little tough, but realistically, it makes no difference if we give the guy $100,000 or $150,000. He's going to squander every penny in 90 days anyway. And that's just the human nature of everything. One of the reasons the welfare system hasn't worked out very well. You just can't throw money at a problem and say this is going to solve the problem. It doesn't. Human nature never changes. That's what Bill Shakespeare's done so well over the last 400 years. But you can make it separate, and you can buy one item out of the estate, one personal property item, or 2 or 1,000, or the whole thing. A lot of times, these people don't want to deal with this. You get it for free. I had one, a couple from Texas came in. It was a triplex over in West L.A. They had a 200SX. I didn't want it. They would not sell the sales contract on the triplex until I agreed to take 200SX, which I did not want. So I had to run an ad in the paper. There was no internet back then. And I picked up $900 they didn't particularly want to spend the time to go after, but I had to in order to buy the real estate. We solve problems, and we help people out.
What you're saying actually there is the fact that a person could be not really interested in the real estate, but they could be looking at probate in order to be able to acquire a lot of this other stuff that we call junk that they could be selling, as you're mentioning, on eBay, or they could really get into the business of it. I could give a personal example on that because I've bought a number of properties which are in probate, and I had a store which was up on MacArthur Boulevard. It used to be an old 5 and 10 cent store. And it was a mixed-use building where there was also apartments there. And because the store closed down, I thought, well, what am I going to do with it? I could be leasing it out to somebody else, etc. But I was buying some of these properties in probate. And as a result, my offers always were in 2 separate parts. One was the real estate, and then also it would be a separate contract for all the contents, etc. And 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't even come to take a look at the stuff. And I'd take the stuff over there, put it into my empty store, hold an auction maybe every couple of months or so, and I made a lot of money. I couldn't believe people buy anything and everything. It's unbelievable the money that can be generated in the area of probate.
Yes, twofold. One, you're 100% right. Some of the students, because kids can't work till they're 16 now, which was different than when you and I grew up, and jobs are harder to come by. They have their kids work the personal property and sell the stuff through eBay so they make money for college. And the conclusion I wanted to talk about, and I left out, was that all the heirs want is the free money. They're not as concerned about fair market value as they are getting their free money. Again, 70% of lottery winners are flat broke within 3 years, and every lottery winner makes over $1 million, and they're broke. Having money doesn't teach you anything about money, but that's what they want. There's an old saying, motivated sellers. There's nobody on earth that's a more motivated seller than somebody who's inheriting something for free, which is redundant because you inherited it is free by definition. Again, it is my belief, after doing it for 30-some years, there is no better way of buying real estate than probate. It can be secret real estate if you get there before anybody else. The address is never in print. It's never published.
You know, Jim, this is such an exciting area, and a lot of people say, my gosh, I've never heard of things like this before. And yet the thing is, practically nobody in the industry of real estate knows really anything about probate. What I found interesting myself is many years ago, and I attended a large conference, and there was thousands of people there, and you were a premier speaker. And it was interesting because the people were jammed into your room more so than other rooms, people standing around the walls trying to hear about what you had to say. And interesting enough, being a speaker, having spoken all over Canada, the United States, and internationally, I've never heard anybody really speaking about probate and what it is. I heard one individual, I think he must have listened to you because it seems to be he was parroting what you had to say. I have never found anybody in the country that knows this subject the way you do. And also, too, is the fact that I know you teach very, very seldom. I understand that when you do decide to teach, you have your conferences in Las Vegas, and they're generally always sold out because you don't get large audiences there because you kind of keep this kind of quiet. You're semi-retired, of course, which is wonderful. How could people get more information, maybe get in touch with you, that they could be able to learn more about this subject matter, or maybe even be able to attend a training, or if you have maybe a home study course of some kind or something? How can we get information for these good people who are listening to us today?
All right. I have a home study course that consists of 12 fully educational CDs with 4 individual workbooks. It is a course that Guthrie Ranker and I developed. It's FTA approved, Federal Trade Commission approved. I also have workbooks to go with that. I also have a book and a CD with all the forms you'll ever need, all the scenarios you will ever need to talk to the estate, and with every industry, nomenclature is everything. And of course, we have a real estate quasi-dictionary, so you're familiar with the terms. It's fully educational. It's the same thing. For 17 years, I put on workshops, and I haven't done it, like you said, in a long time, 10, 12 years. It was $6,000 a seat, and anyway, I quit doing that, started buying properties.
Jim, you talk about like $6,000 a seat, and I know years ago that people would pay $6,000 for a seat, that type of thing. But you know, when we had the large recession, as you know, a lot of people, of course, don't have the same kind of spendable money, but we certainly would not want to be able to cut the people out of being able to take advantage of what we're talking about. So you gave us a lot of information. Many of our listeners right now, they're sitting there and they're glued to listening to what you have to say. How could people get more information, maybe get in touch with you?
Yes, sir. My website is jimbanksprobate.net, and I will return the email, make it to jim@jimbanksprobate.net. On that website, it says the cost of the course is $19.97. For anybody listening to this through Al, we're discounting just like probate, half price. So it's $9.97. Those of you who are old like me and believe humans talk to humans, you can leave a message at 702-606-2107. Probate works. If it didn't, I wouldn't still be around after 30 years. Same thing with Mr. Lowry's courses.
You know, Jim, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Very informative and something that's exciting that people can do. They can start creating a secondary income, just work a couple of hours a week at it, that type of thing. There's other professionals, of course, that you can recommend that can assist them and help them, etc. This is fascinating. And when you consider that people go to college there, they spend $30,000 and $50,000 of dollars trying to get an education in order to get a little job somewhere, paying $40,000 or $50,000 a year, and yet they could go ahead and invest into your training and be able to go out there and probably make that in their spare time with ease. It's just a matter of taking the time to learn and get out there. I want to thank you once again, Jim, for being with us. This has been the Real Estate Wealth Insider, Albert Lowry speaking, and I look forward to being with you next month. Have a good one.